congruence, which basically means how you think, how you feel in your body, and how you are. The more aligned they are, the more you will come across as somebody who is persuasive, somebody who is genuine, somebody who is real. Most of us do not like being corrected. Hypnosis itself, or hypnotherapy for that matter, these are really, really powerful self-development tools. And I got you to imagine that reality.
Correct.
So what happened to our reality? That broke.
That broke.
That is hypnosis, where frames get broken all the time. When it comes to hypnotherapy, what you're doing is, it's a very conscious decision to go back in time and heal. Our limitations come from the past.
I'm very intrigued. So because my audience is a very young audience and they also have to pay a lot of attention on self-growth and learning and all of this, I definitely know NLP is one such program that can help any individual across platforms.
100%, yeah.
So in one question, what is NLP and who is it for?
Interesting. So let me start with who is it for, okay? If you think about it like this, we all communicate all day long, right? We communicate, whether it's on our phones, whether it's, like messages, whether it is videos. Today, people are starting to realize that, you need to get proficient, you need to get comfortable on camera, because everything is moving towards that. Sooner or later, that sort of is going to be even more mainstream, right? So who is it for? Everybody. And think of it like this: if you're somebody who communicates, right, having and knowing NLP, as in Neuro Linguistic Programming, is very, very beneficial. Why am I saying that? Because most of us communicate based on how we learned to communicate from, let's say, if you're talking about your audience which is in their 20s. So over the last 12 to 15 years, they have learned to communicate a certain way, which means there are definitely going to be flaws in that communication. And a lot of times, and I've seen this in the many years, that even if you make an error, whether it is in the way you speak, meaning, let's say, your pronunciation, like there's some people who call it pronunciation. Now, even simple things like that, right? Other people are not going to correct you.
Correct.
That's point number one. Point number two is, most of us do not like being corrected.
Correct.
Yeah, we kind of take it personally, like, oh, he's out, he or she's out to get me.
Yeah.
So our ability to take feedback itself is pretty limited.
Correct.
We take it personally.
Correct.
So when you, for instance, if you talk specifically about NLP as in Neuro Linguistic Programming, this is one of those, I like to look at it as a meta tool, because within that tool it's got many
layers,
like sub tools.
Yeah. So essentially it removes certain barriers that are built consciously and subconsciously, and then also equips you with the right replacement for those barriers with the right kind of tools or necessary knowledge or skill sets, which will make you improve definitely your interpersonal communication and any other communication skills.
Definitely. And I mean, I'm agreeing with all of what you're saying. Think of it like this, right? We are anyway constantly talking to ourselves. But when you know, for example, when you learn, when knowing in the senses, you learn it, right? Because it's like any language. When you learn it, then you start to realize when you're kind of, not, so we use this word congruence, which basically means how you think, how you feel in your body, and how you are. The more aligned they are, the more you will come across as somebody who is persuasive, somebody who is genuine, somebody who is real. Otherwise, it's like, filters can only do so much.
True.
Right? At the end of the day, if you are, like, you're saying something, but you're feeling something else, right? Like a simple thing, right? Right now, my hands are freezing because of the environment, also because of the adrenaline, and I'm aware of that. But I also know inside, my body is like probably, like burning at this point. So there is this, there is this sort of like an awareness of it.
Got it.
But I also know that I'm here because I genuinely want to be able to help people.
Makes sense.
Right?
Makes sense.
So for people, especially in their 20s, this is one of those tools for you to be able to reflect within. Right? And a lot of us think, yeah, I'll do that when I'm 50 or 60 or 70. But treat this like any other habit. If you start doing it now, by the time you're in your 30s, by the time you're in your 40s, right, your life will look, literally it'll look like, you know, all your dreams that you had hoped for when, like 10 years ago, when you were in your, let's say in your teens, that will start to show up. So what is NLP, right? So there are three components to this, which is, there's one that's got to do with your mind, that's the neuro part. There's the linguistic, which is the language, the words that we use, the words that we are saying inside, right? And programming is basically, we are always being programmed. Just take that as a default, even if you don't believe in it, because you're seeing messaging, right? Your parents, your relatives, your friends, everybody is basically programming you to think a certain way, right? So you need to have this as one of those. It's like there used to be this thing called the Swiss pen knife, which is like a, you know, like you can do anything with that knife because it's got all these different, you know, blades and tools and what have you, right? So you'll always be able to take care of yourself no matter where you are.
Yeah, and I think it'll also, if you persist, it will also end up being accomplished
Yes.
very quicker than what you actually thought it would be.
Exactly.
Now, quickly shifting gears here, Rahul, I want to know, from a very common man's perspective, what's the difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy in like possibly a line or two?
Okay, hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Like I said, a lot of NLP or Neuro Linguistic Programming, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it comes from the roots of hypnosis. If you think of it like this, even right now, as you're watching this or as we are sitting here, right, we are in a state of trance. That means we are in a state of focus. Whether we are focused on each other's energy, conversation, words, right, or it could be we are triggered by what we are seeing and we are somewhere else. Either ways, it just means that you are in one particular trance at this point. So hypnosis is, let's call it like a programming that you can use, either it's done to you or you do it. So for example, if you want to go to the gym, with the right kind of hypnosis, it will happen every day without you even thinking about it. With the wrong kind of hypnosis, it will be one of the hardest things that for the next 20 years also you struggle with, it will still not happen. You'll have moments when you do it, you'll have moments when you don't.
Got it.
Right? So in essence, like hypnosis is, let's call it programming for now, right, for simplicity. Hypnotherapy, as the name suggests, there is a healing component to it, which is again, you know, if you're somebody who is consistently, let's say, you know, having like maybe panic attacks or anxiety. So panic attacks is something very specific. Anxiety is something sort of slightly wider in frame, right? Or it may be, let's say, there are things in your life which keep cropping up. Maybe there's been trauma from the past, right? Maybe a few years ago, like for a lot of us, COVID has, you know, created that deep scarring in us. A lot of us are not even aware of what that implies. But I'll tell you this, it's good to have some amount of therapy. I'm not saying go overboard with it, like with anything else. You don't want to go overboard, but have some amount of it, because it's a good way for you to clean up stuff that's been happening in the past.
I think that makes a lot of sense also, because we only believe in cleaning our room, in cleaning our possible body from toxins, but never have we even thought about something beyond, which is our mind and our conscious state and our subconscious state and all of these things. And I definitely do know that these are certain tools. Now, attaching to the same question, I want to ask you the next part of the question, which is hypnotherapy is not understood by everybody in the right sense, also because of its portrayal in the media as something else. Which part of the media portrayal is true and which part of it is false?
So there are a couple of, that's a very complex question, so I'll simplify it for the moment, right? There are certain things that, for example, in the US, by law, they cannot show you a full therapy session.
Okay.
So even if you watch a, like, quote unquote hypnotherapy session that's happening in a movie or a let's say on OTT, right, on your platforms, truth is that you're not going to see exactly what it is. It's not possible. Okay. In an Indian context, I don't think we have too much of that kind of programming. I think the closest might have been PLR, which I think there used to be some reality TV thing a couple of years ago, right? So Unfortunately, for a lot of people, there are these very conventional notions of hypnosis, not even hypnotherapy. Like that's why I said, what you asked is a great question. It's a very complex question.
Okay.
If you say hypnosis, there's that, the magician, stage hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like these are things.
Mentalism.
Mentalism, at least, I would say mentalism is still a more refined version of it.
Okay.
It's more produced, it's more choreographed, right? Hypnosis, when you say stage hypnosis, it has a lot of, like, even if you go on, obviously if you're watching this on YouTube, and let's say if you type in stage hypnosis, you'll see stuff that feels very sort of entertaining, right? But hypnosis itself, or hypnotherapy for that matter, these are really, really powerful self-development tools, as I've seen it also, like not just in my own life, but in the lives of my clients, in the lives of people that I work with, right? So, and I guess the easiest way of explaining it is, if you think about sports, most sports people are some of the greatest hypnotists. Because otherwise, how do you manage that adrenaline? How do you manage the what do they call it? People's expectations.
Yeah. Can you give me an example? Like, let's give me an example of like you said, a sportsman. Like tell me, like, what part of it is hypnosis?
So all of it is hypnosis, because think about it like this. Let's say, okay, let's take cricket. Okay, you're standing there literally on the pitch, and if you've ever been to a stadium, it's a pretty huge stage, right? If you had to, try to be aware of everybody in the stage, or in the stadium, there's no way that you'll be able to perform.
100%.
Which means you're tuning everything else out, and you're tuning into what you're here to do. Right? That's the simplest way of explaining it.
I think essentially that is what you want them to do, right?
Correct.
Because noise is unavoidable, be it in stadium, be it in life, or be it on the road.
Correct.
Noise is inevitable.
Correct.
And how you quieten your inner noise to that one streamline effect to where you can actually produce something that you want is where I think the genius is.
Yeah. And this is just my theory on it. I'm sure people can agree, disagree, whatever it be. But for example, when you have this thing called the sight screen, have you ever wondered why you have a sight screen in cricket?
No.
And you notice sometimes they'll like tell people to move.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's everything to do with focus. Like if you and I are having this, like right now we're having this conversation. If someone was to be walking behind either of us, you wouldn't be able to maintain this state that you're in right now. You'd get so distracted. It's like, you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and listen to a video. You can't do both. You may think you're doing both.
I'm actually trying to imagine somebody right behind you, and what would I do? Yeah, makes sense.
And meaning, especially if that somebody was there behind, firstly say somebody was standing behind me, and they move back and forth. There's no way you'd be able to be in. So even right now, if I don't know if it will show up on camera, but your energy shifted.
Yeah.
Because you were trying to pay attention to what I said, which is hypnosis, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I got you to imagine somebody, right? And I got you to imagine that reality.
Correct.
So what happened to our reality? That broke.
That broke.
That is hypnosis, where frames get broken all the time.
Nice. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, and even people who don't understand it from a scientific level can just, with this analogy, use it. Now, okay, then also tell me what part of this can be beneficial for human life and everyday life, in fact.
Yeah.
Is it something? Okay. Well, I think I have a follow up to that, but you can just answer this question.
So say the question again, please.
So I'm saying, what part of this entire process of hypnotherapy is beneficial to us? Like, how is it going to patch between things that we don't understand?
Okay. So again, I'll differentiate the two, hypnosis and hypnotherapy. If you're talking specifically about hypnotherapy, a lot of, I guess in the simplest way, a lot of our beliefs about who I am, what I can do, what I cannot do, a lot of this stems from, if you go back in time, there will be these individual moments in our life where we were told, or where we took it as, oh, I can't do dash. So our limitations come from the past. Think about it. Our limitations come from the past. So hypnotherapy is a much deeper way to go back in time and clear out whatever garbage got stuck in at that point, That point, it was an idea, it was a decision.
Correct.
When, as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, if I'm saying, yeah, okay, I can't do that, it's just a decision then. But today, it's that, what is it they call it? Your, the ball and chain that you're carrying near your foot or with your foot.
I think one example of this, which I've always shared in my classes as well to my students, is, not to my students, in fact, to their parents, is if you label your child that he's weak in mathematics when he's in 5th grade, he will end up believing that he is weak for the rest of his life.
Correct.
Then, and now it stands true with when I'm sitting across a professional who works with people on the same lines, that now I know, now I also know mathematics is the language of nature. And I also know for a fact that spirituality could be understood through mathematics. Like, we were the inventors of zero. It comes from the state of shunya, right? And all of these things, when I'm spiritual, it just makes so much sense. Calculus becomes so easy to understand. But just because my grandfather and my mother kept labeling that you're weak at math, I just believed that until I was 18. And I always failed at math. Always. And I had
no surprise.
No surprise, right?
So I'll give you just a practical example. Some of you may have already seen this, but in the context of what we're talking about. I mean, imagine if you have your hand out like this, and you keep telling yourself, like, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. Pretty soon your hand is just going to drop down. If you hold it up like this and you say, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, you'll notice, you'll feel a certain strength popping in. Okay. Now, why does it drop? Because what you're saying, when I say I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, why does it start? After a point, why does it start to drop down? Because it's heavy. When I say I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, there's a certain, it's like, yeah, I got this, I got this, and that translates into your body as well.
Very interesting.
So again, these are like tiny little things. Tying it back to a previous question when we talked about NLP, what they did there was they drew out sort of, maybe let's, again, this is my perspective, through my experiences, they drew out the practicality and sort of, like, to an extent left some of the spirituality behind.
Okay.
Going back to what you just talked about, spirituality. In hypnosis, a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what we're experiencing has spirituality woven into it.
Yeah.
When it comes to hypnotherapy, what you're doing is, it's a very conscious decision to go back in time and heal. So hypnosis is where I can say, it's like saying, don't think of a blue chicken wearing a red bandana.
You will think about it.
For most people who heard this or even seen it, they'll probably see a flash of it, or they'll, depending again on how they visualize, they'll see it. So what have I done? I've incepted that idea. But if I say, like, imagine you actually have this healing stone in your hand right now. Right? Imagine you have a healing stone in your hand right now. And you get to keep this stone with you for the rest of your life. Whenever you're worried, you just remember this healing stone in your hand. And notice what's already happening.
There's, can I say what happened instantly? Like for me, instantly, it felt like somebody just grabbed all my worries, threw them away, and said, here's something that'll never come back. It was possibly like a pacifier. Like a pacifier now becomes my dependent tool, right? And now in an instant, then I started hitting back to what I was told when my mom used to tie a sacred thread to my hand. Or when a gemstone was given to an individual saying, if you have a diamond or a topaz attached to your hand, this is what it signifies. And every time you see it, the affirmation happens again. So it took me to multiple dimensions, but this is what happens.
So let me sort of give you the sciencey-ish version of it.
Let's go.
And that's why it's an ish to it. Basically, there is the science of gemology and all of that stuff, right? That's different conversation for a different time. But keep it in mind like this. When something is given to you, and again it's like the conditions apply. Like you have to have the right conditions in place. But when something is given to you in a ritualized way where you are not in your conscious mind.
Okay.
That means you are open. One of the best examples is every day when we go to the shower. When that water is flowing on you, you're open.
That's why people love the showers.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you're in that kind of a state, and when something is given to you and there is you're attaching meaning to it. That's why in our Indian culture, we've known this for centuries. Remember, hypnosis, NLP, these are all like less than 100 years old.
Yeah, they're like modern packages of the ancient knowledge.
Of the ancient knowledge, where we have been blessed to have had it, to still have it, and now our awareness of it, which is why we're having this conversation on a foreign platform, but talking about something that is purely our tradition, that's always been there. And now we're kind of reimagining it. We're going, oh, okay, I get it. Now that thread means something. That's why it's called a sacred thread. Every word, every intonation has a meaning. And when it does not fight against your frame of what you believe to be possible, then when you look at that gemstone, whether it's real or whether it is in your mind, you will be able to, in one moment, literally snap out of whatever crap that you were sort of channeling. You let that go, and instead, now you know, momentarily, for that one brief moment, you're in a state of shunya.
Here and now.
Exactly.
Very interesting. Very interesting, because it actually rewired a lot of my thoughts as well, because I just want to dwell on that here and now moment for a bit, because I think it's going to build context for the little more conversation we're going to have.
Sure.
Recently, again, while I was experiencing this whole be here now moment, I'm sure you can also get this. Have you ever wondered why a flower is used in our puja, or why flowers have this, why flowers have so much meaning in it? Like, I mean, I'm sure you do. What's your take on it?
In fact, I'm curious to know, since you've shared the analogy, like, I'm curious to know what's your, like, what was it that struck you?
For me, the first thing is, a flower has symmetry.
Right.
So it shows me connection, right? Second, no matter how symmetrical and how beautiful, it's not permanent.
Right.
And the only way to actually truly experience a plant is to touch a flower or touch the plant in itself. So you actually feel what, so the people have these hugging tree concepts and all that. And I'm sure even that's not too old. And the second part is, you to really observe the beauty of a flower, you got to be here and now. There is no way you can be here and now without observing. I mean, I feel it's interlinked. Second, some flowers also give you aroma.
Correct.
Right? And even the aroma can draw your attention from somewhere and bring you back here.
Yeah.
And then now you got to really question the idol sitting there, and if that's real.
Right.
Right, and if you can get an answer to that, and mix that answer with this one, I think there's a lot of things that's happening. So I just feel, when you use flowers for a puja, I think it's the acknowledgement of nature's beauty as it is, in its elite form of symmetry, smell, feel, and touch. And if that's the epitome of nature's beauty, you're using the epitome of nature's beauty to actually acknowledge the formless of nature. So I'm just saying, at the end of it, it's nothing about God. The very act of dropping a flower or offering a flower in itself has multiple dimensions to it. I mean, this is how I'm looking at it. Maybe I've not drawn a complete picture, but this is how I'm seeing it.
I love what you said. I'll add to it. There are two elements, right? One is anchors. And since we're talking specific to this context, just so people, kind of, if nothing else, if you start becoming more conscious of what are these anchors in your life that you've got.
What's an anchor, by the way?
So let's call them remembrances, reminders.
Reminders, like a bookmark.
Yeah, I would go, bookmark will still be a very weak-ish anchor. A book can be an anchor.
Okay.
Like, let's simply put, you have a bookshelf, there will be like at least 2 books, if not more, that truly mean something to you.
Correct.
So an anchor is a symbol of something that means a lot more, right? That's one part of it. And the second is, which I kind of alluded to a moment ago, which is symbols. So when what you said, if I was to use one word to kind of encapsulate it, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of dash. It's a symbol of nature. It's a symbol of the universe all in one space, right? What I shared with you a few moments ago when I talked about that healing stone, that's a symbol. Now, I didn't prepare that. It came to me.
Came to you. Yeah.
Now, it came to me because I was in that state of hypnosis then. If I was to try and recall it, it will not have the same feeling, it will have a similar sense.
Got it.
Right? And just since we talked about the stone, the more, because that stone is yours, right? Now, the more you put that into your daily existence, which is why we carry symbols, tavis, right? Why we carry whatever it is, whether it's the Mangal Sutra. I mean, all of these things are essentially symbols and anchors, which is why it's very important to be mindful of what you're putting into that symbol. Think of it.
Yeah.
Like in this day and age, if I say the word tavis or Mangal Sutra, it can have many different meanings to people.
Yeah, for some people it could be a chain of,
Exactly.
jailing them inside.
As I said the word Mangal Sutra, that's what came to me. That in this day and age, where we are all, in many ways, we are in a state of fluidity.
Correct.
Whether it comes to gender, whether it comes to, I mean, basically any form of identity. If you ask me, going back to, one of your previous questions, when we talk about NLP as a Neuro Linguistic Programming, one of the concepts that they really did a lot of justice to, and it's still very early days, like 50, 70, 80 years is nothing when you think about, like pure science, right? It's nothing. It's like a blip at this point. But what they did very well was they chose to look at identity. And more importantly, what it means today, especially, if you're somebody in your 20s, you can change your identity. For a lot of, like when I was in my 20s and, I decided to switch tracks, where I was like, okay, I'll do advertising. I thought I was going to do that at least for 15 years. And then there would be the question, then what? In my 20s itself, I was like, okay, I really went all in, meaning I did from my degree in psychology, I did my MBA in marketing with the intention of being, a really good professional in advertising, but I chose to switch tracks. Today, people are doing that, whether they are, doctors, I mean, it could be any professional, meaning you're an engineer, right? And then again, this is of course post-COVID, that for a lot of people, they've had a moment to reflect, right? And now we're talking 2 years later. So there's a lot of that, cooling off that's happening, and people are realizing that, oh yeah, you know what? Let me pick something else where I feel more, with myself. So why am I saying all of this? Is that when we talk about, your identity, right? Anchors play a very important part.
Nice.
So if you have friends, for example, who are your anchors, and they don't match the identity that you want to be, just be mindful, because there will be a cascade. There will be people who will give you hell for it. Right? Why are you doing this? You should do what you studied.
Yeah.
It could be parents, could be colleagues, could be friends,
Teachers.
yeah. All of them somewhere are, they're part of your old avatar.
Correct.
If you're in the process of shifting that avatar, just be aware that you yourself charge those anchors. Your teacher is an anchor. Like if I say, okay, so Lalith, when you think of your most amazing teacher that you came across in your life, right? Like literally, like think about that person now, right? Notice what's happening already, right? Do you see that person's face?
Yeah.
Now you do, right? Do you know how you feel or how you felt when that, like the person was really, like you really loved this teacher. This teacher really made a difference to you, right? Now we're warming up. Now you think of somebody who you're like, oh my God, why did I have that teacher in my life? Right? Now it's interesting because I'm seeing more of a poker face, but internally there is something that's happening, right? The point is that now you're shifting tracks. So those old anchors also need to be cleansed.
Nice.
Just like when we talk about stones, right? You also want to keep, your anchors. You want to keep purifying them from time to time.
Makes sense. Man, I think I think we got into a very good conversation there. And tell me this, man. Like, you are a hypnotherapist, and that's how we actually met.
Yeah.
How did you get into this space, and when did it all start?
So I'm going to start. Usually, the response will be to tell you, okay, so this is, I'm a hypnotherapist. I've been doing this for X number of years, but I'll sort of jump back in time. Uh, Before I got into this space, I was in advertising,
Okay.
right? So in those days, I'm talking a good 20 years ago, everything was about, like find your passion, and then when you find your passion, everything else will sort itself out, right? That was the theory. So I became a student of that theory, and I did advertising for a couple of years. But then I got to a point where I burnt out after like 3.5, 4 years, and I was like, okay, I did my MBA because I wanted to get into advertising, but there's something missing. So what is that something, right? So my background my degree was in psychology, and I've always been a keen student of, it's like, I don't know if they use the term anymore, but it's like people watching was like a big thing, and some people do it a lot, some people, you know, um, may not be that keen as observers, but simply put, so like I said, this story goes back to me starting off wanting to do advertising. I did my advertising for about 3.5 years, 3.5, 4 years, and then I burnt out. So I said, okay, I thought this was my passion. I was supposed to be doing this. Now what? Right? That's just how life is. So that's when I started to dig deeper, and I recognized that working with people is something that I've always enjoyed doing. So okay, burnouts happen. Now what, right? So I go, okay, let me start to skill myself. So I started with psychology. I mean, in fact, I started with counseling. So I did my diploma in counseling, and then I started to realize that okay, this is the space that I'm meant to be in, but there's still something missing. So it was like the hashtag something is missing seemed to kind of like go with me. So that happened for a bit, and as I started to go deeper and deeper, I found NLP, and I'm talking not NLP how people know today in the 2021, 22, 23, right? I'm talking like eons ago. And so around 2007, I began that journey. So I went really deep, like from 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper.
In NLP?
In NLP specifically.
Okay.
Now, along that way, I realized that, okay, a lot of like I don't see myself, at least at this point, at this point of the recording, I don't see myself as being, okay, I'm going to be another trainer of NLP.
Okay.
That's not what drives me. So what I realized was it was about transformation. It is about really being able to help people. And in order for that to happen, I realized there's something beyond NLP. What is that? So life beyond NLP was what I started to discover. I said, okay, so what is it that I'm missing? For me, that's always, if you ask me, like, okay, say Rahul, what's a hack, right? This is one of those. Like, what am I missing, right? Especially in your professional journey, it's so important to keep tapping in, because otherwise it's very easy to become complacent, right? Where like, okay, life is happening, work is happening, business is happening, what do you call it? Salary is happening. So that's when I started to discover that okay, at the end of the day, where did NLP come from? It was by studying some of the world's greatest communicators and the greatest hypnotist who was available. When I say available, he was alive at that point, right? So that's when I said, okay, who's around today that teaches hypnosis? And that led me to from hypnosis to hypnotherapy, and in my case it was he's my mentor at this point. His name is Igor Ledachowski. So people who know him, otherwise it's one of those world's best kept secrets. Right? So that actually, in a very, very sort of expanded way to answer your question, has been these last 17 years of really wanting to For me, honestly, it's about being able to be of value to people.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to just make people feel good.
True, and I think feeling is very surface.
Yeah.
Now you have to go beyond that, and you'll have to get down to the root of it, because I feel feeling is the fruit of it, right?
Well said.
I've also observed that when we had a conversation on call, when we've had a conversation even off stage, I've observed that when you're speaking, there was something that I felt that I also possibly felt when I saw your LinkedIn profile, and it kind of resonated. Is a lot of people also call you like you're a person with like a Zen-like aura, right? But I also know that comes from your experience and you digging deep within. But can you actually tell me, where does it actually come from? Is it your natural state, or was it something that you learned and you built over a period of time? Why do people call you that? Why do they call you that you have a Zen-like aura?
That's again, this is one of those very complex questions. It's probably what they are seeing, right? I mean, going back to your question, it's probably what they're seeing. It's like saying, when you think about in your own life, and people say you're this very, you're a very intense person. A lot of times you may not know why you're like that. It's just who you are. So for me, if I was to say, okay, why is it, has it always been like that? Probably it has always been like that. It's just that I've not paid too much attention to, is that in my nature? It might be, right? Because for me, like I said, I think, yeah, maybe one way to explain it, and now I'm like, diving into your question, which is, maybe for me, I've recognized that a lot of the answers that the world has, they live outside of me. So I don't have to try and solve or figure that out, right? I'm here to hold the space for other people to have that experience. So I've taken, so I've like lightened my load, right? So I'm like, okay, you're having a bad day. Hey, non-judgment. I'm here for you. You share whatever, and I will create that space where you will feel like, okay, yeah, I feel safe. This person is not going to attack me. This person is not going to lecture me, right? And it takes all the pressure off me as well. I don't have to pretend to know all the answers, which is why, like I said, I've just thought about what you're saying, so I'm sharing this with you. I don't know if that's the answer.
True. I think I like it, and it can come from both parts. That you could be born that way, and you could be made that way, or it could be a combination of both.
Yeah.
As you move on, I also feel a lot of who we are is also made, and this made part is unearthing who you really are. Right? You don't immediately discover what's your potential, what's your strength and what's your weaknesses. It takes certain experiences. And a lot of these experiences require reflective moments.
Correct.
And reflective moments come by meeting great people, by reading intellectual books, consuming philosophy, or doing any sort of ego-crushing exercise where your immediate vision is distorted and then you're taken into another dimension. Now, one of such experiences that I've had was the first time I came across the documentary The Secret, not the book, the documentary on Netflix. And when I did go through it, it felt so energizing. It felt so different, and it felt like, hey, I'm amongst that 1% of elite people who actually knows this.
Yeah.